on how hemp can create a revolution in a grassroots movement and help the world and the planet. And that's why I have one of my senior advisors and colleagues and friends, Melissa Gibson with Hemp and Humanity. Melissa's been pioneering in the space for about 5 years now, and she's a wealth of knowledge, not just hemp and impact, but also thinking local and starting local movements. And I'm really grateful to have known her. She's connected me to a lot of amazing people in the space. And the point of today's conference is how we can make a blueprint for a better future using hemp. I've been an advocate for this plant for 9 years, knowing that all it can do. And once we get touched by the plant, I feel it moves people to spend their life working on it. And I know you're committed to this, Melissa, and you just opened up a storefront in Woodstock, New York, Hemping Humanity with all hemp products. It's very exciting. And yeah, I guess tell the people some about your story and how you got started in hemp and you know, the movement you've been working on.
All right, thank you. And yes, I'm also a hemp advocate. I've been in the space for 4 or 5 years, and I've really been in the idea that reconnecting humans with this plant can really be a big sea change in our lifetime. It's really an amazing plant. I got started because of a health issue that I had, or several health issues combined. I had several autoimmune disorders that were affecting my life: celiac disease and Lyme disease. And I didn't feel like myself. I am a very active person. And the answers that I was being given in terms of providing solutions for how I felt were all pharmaceutically based, and that's fine. But it wasn't really working for me as well as they thought it could. I had a lot of stress in my life. And about 5 years ago, I went through something called a thyroid storm. Through a lot of stress, my thyroid was overactive and it made me jumpy, lost weight, weak, and I was really not myself for a while. And I was with an organization in upstate New York, and we were at the time looking at the potential for hemp to perhaps revitalize some of the rural areas in our region. And that's really the first time that I came across hemp and CBD. I didn't know the difference at that time between hemp and marijuana. I knew the terms, of course, and I had some personal experience with it. But through my work with CBD, I was able to, I want to say I took it therapeutically. I'm not a medical professional, but I took it on a regular basis. I learned as much as I could about where it came from, how it worked in my body, learned about the endocannabinoid system. And after a while, I felt better. And the numbers proved it. When I had my blood tests, you could see that my conditions were going into remission. But most importantly, I felt better. And I knew that if this could do this for me, it could help others. So that's really where my journey began. My background is in entrepreneurship, social enterprise, sustainability, and business development. My background is I have a degree in agriculture economics and an MBA in brand management. So for me, it was easy to just put all those things together and create a business that could teach people about the plant. I could curate products that I had vetted. At the time, there wasn't much regulation in the industry. It was very much of a gray industry before the Farm Bill passed in December of 2018. And there were a lot of struggles with that. But my goal was to, again, introduce this plant to people. And I did everything from working in farmers markets to speaking at events to taking every opportunity to talk about the plant. And it's only just recently, in the last, since the end of September, that I've opened up an actual brick and mortar store in the town of Woodstock, New York, where I live. And it's been an incredible ride so far.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story. And, you know, once you learn about all it can do, you want to share it with as many people as you can. And you've been a great advocate for that and speaker and researcher and very passionate. I appreciate all your work. And the storefront idea, I think, is brilliant. I've always thought there should be an all hemp store. Even eventually it'd be made out of hemp, and it can kind of showcase to the people on how hemp can affect every part of our life, from our soaps to our food to our clothing. It's pretty substantial, and we've been talking about how the hemp house we're going to be building down here in Puerto Rico. We're going to be filling up some of the house with the products from your store to showcase to the island on how hemp can really impact local regenerative economics and improve the health of the not just the economy but the ecosystem, and that's what we're here talking about. And so you creating your own store is one direct way that people can take action. Some of the goals of this talk is to how do we feel that this plant can get to the masses. And I know you had some ideas on based on your story and your journey. Can you talk about how you got into the storefront idea?
Well, I mean, so again, my background is in sustainable enterprise, and localism is a really big part of that. When you shop locally and you invest locally, you have a tremendous impact on the community around you. There's something called the economic multiplier. And what that is really when you spend in your local town, or even if a visitor comes in and spends, the idea is that you want to keep that money that was invested in the town. So in order to do that, you continue to spend locally with, let's say $100 comes in from a tourist to Woodstock, they spend it in my store. Then I take that $100 and I go out to dinner at a local restaurant and I spend my $100 there. And then the owner pays his local employees with that money. And then those employees take that money and, buy an instrument at the local music store, and on it goes. And that's the economic multiplier. That $100 can stay in the community and continue to grow. Whereas if any of those choices were to sort of make a decision to go outside the community and buy something, from Amazon or something, then there it goes. So this idea is that if you, I didn't think I was going to have a brick and mortar location. This opportunity, and certainly not under, in COVID, the opportunity came to me because I'm good friends with a local company that makes bean to bar chocolate, internationally award-winning chocolate company. And they have another, they have a factory in a different part of town, and they were looking to sublease their small place in the heart of Woodstock, and they were looking for somebody to do that. And I jumped at the chance because after COVID and being in lockdown, and after a couple of years of doing some online work, I realized that my heart was really in having the conversations with the public about this plant. And I want to make it clear that while I do have plenty of CBD and cannabinoid products in my store, I celebrate the whole plant. So I use the opportunity of someone asking me a question about, I have anxiety, should I take this capsule or this sublingual, to talk about where they came from and the entire plant. In my store, I have beautiful hemp fiber bags. And unfortunately, in the US, our hemp fiber industry is not as robust as our cannabinoid hemp industry for many reasons. And the largest of which that we don't have the infrastructure yet. And processing hemp fiber is a very labor intensive process. But what I'm doing for that is I'm working with an organization in Nepal that is using hemp and the processing of hemp to train unskilled workers, to create another local living economy for artists and fabric makers. And then I'm purchasing those products. I'm the first to bring theirs to the US. And then what that does is it sort of networks my local area to their local area. And the term for that is glocalism. So it's localism on a global scale, but rather than scaling, way up, it's sort of like a network of many, epicenters that have environmental impact and social impact and economic impact. And through that way, hemp can definitely change the world for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the local economic multiplier, keeping the money in the region actually improves everything. And there's actually a term along my journey that I learned at a hemp farmers union conference in Wisconsin about how parity. Parity is a term where it's a total percentage of economic value that stays in the region that it's derived from. And in farmers' heyday in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was around 50% of the economic value that was derived from the region stayed there. And now it's under 10%. And so regions are being depleted of the resources that they generate. And we have, I think, a new ability with this plant to set up localized economic development in a circular fashion. And that's been part of our talks and a lot of people's talks. And I think that's the main reason they made the plant demonized in the first place, is they realized it would break up monopolies and these global conglomerates that have been exploiting and extracting from the planet through
Mhm.
oil or chopping down trees or mining for concrete. And hemp is primed to replace a lot of the extractive industries and create local jobs. And I just read today that actually Joe Biden, part of his climate initiatives, they're talking about investing some money into hemp fiber production for the United States to create
Yeah.
regional development.
And that
And
would be Sorry, I was going to say that, it's not as if every area has to have the same hemp industry landscape. I mean, it's referred to as the hemp industries. There are so many industries that can come from this one plant. I can't think of anything else that can feed you, clothe you, shelter you, heal you, fuel you. I mean, it's something that is spectacular. So different regions, different localized, ecosystems can focus on that part of the plant, the supply chain, the value chain that makes sense for them. And it may be that, I live in New York, and it may be that New York really focuses on cannabinoid hemp, where Kentucky focuses on fiber hemp, or not even to say an entire state would be a monolith. But there are just so many options. And as you mentioned, instead of it being an extractive process, it's a regenerative process, or it can be. I mean, certainly you can grow hemp with the same sort of toxins and pesticides that you grow other products if you're trying to scale too quickly. But this plant does have the ability to improve, not only take from the environment, but improve the environment, to sequester CO2, to mediate the soil, and and why chop down a tree that's been growing for 100 years to make something that can be created from a plant that could potentially have 3 or 4, growth cycles in a year. It's really just something that, it's a shift. It's a shift in thinking. And we have so many uh, industries that have been extractive for so long that many economies are based on that. But we're trying in every small way. You and I have talked a lot about, the fact that we're going to make this change in little tiny increments. It's not going to happen all at once. It's too much. It's sort of like asking someone who, wants to be vegan but eats a cheeseburger every day to then go from a cheeseburger to a salad from then on. First you take the cheese off, then you switch it to, a mushroom burger, then you take the bread or whatever. It's just little tiny steps. And if we take the concept of harm reduction, which says, if I do something less harmful today than I did yesterday, that's a win. We don't have to go all the way or wait till we get all the way to say that we've won. And I know that all the work that you do, including this conference, is about raising awareness and challenging people to think, what little steps can I take? I mean, none of us are perfect. We'd love to all just have, everything recycled, everything reused. Sometimes, you know, it's more convenient to use something that's not as kind to the planet, but we're getting there. And my goal, in my small way, with my store in Woodstock, is to sort of light that spark and have people consider things that they haven't considered before. And it's unique in that Woodstock is considered the most famous small town in the world. Everybody knows about it. And so we get a lot of visitors. And so I hope that, our town and the things and our values, and then the values of our store, rub off on them, and then they take it to their, you know, towns and their circles and their spheres of influence, and it just goes from there.
Yeah, and I, you know, spreading the word is still today much needed of the work that needs to be done. Most people still know all the things that hemp can do. It's starting to become popular thanks to CBD, you know, but that's just one of the. Even though CBD and cannabinoids have hundreds of uses for different illnesses, um, it's still just one of the many miracles that this plant holds, and it is a change in mindset and a shift in thinking. I just watched Kiss the Ground a couple of weeks ago. I've been talking with one of the founders of that movement, Finian, and they mention in there that from like 1600 till 1900, there's not one mention of regenerative practices or sustainability in any of the economic doctrine. You know, it was not even part of the thinking of how we should steward the earth in any way, from producing any kind of goods. So it's still relatively new, this idea that we don't have to extract from our earth to make the products that we need. And it's being on this journey of sustainability, environmental awareness. It really is baffling sometimes that it seems like the lack of forward thinking, of creating these single-use products that last millions of years, that there wasn't going to be any backlash at some point. You know, and I think we're at that point where people realize that we all need to take micro actions and start demanding these things. And there's it's kind of like at that tipping point, I feel.
I feel it too, and I think that you know, legislation and regulation goes a long way towards that. But there are things that everybody can do, and just to open their hearts and minds to this plant, because we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting from a neutral starting point where people don't know what they think about this plant because of the war on drugs, because of prohibition, because of misinformation and disinformation. There's a stigma associated with this plant that we have to overcome. And again, that's one conversation at a time. And I think we're making progress. I mean, certainly in the U.S., the elections had one clear winner this year, and that was cannabis. Every time it was up for a vote, it was a win and a yes. So we're getting there. I'm very hopeful. I think everybody should watch that documentary, Kiss the Ground. Again, it is a hopeful blueprint for what we can do. It's not too late to save the ability of our species to continue to live on this planet, but it does require some change. And through your organization, through conferences like this, through hopefully the work that I do in my small way, we're going to make inroads. We're going to make a change, and we're going to leave this planet better for generations to come. And there's so much hope with the future. The younger generations, they already get it. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even if if we're not successful in changing hearts and minds, they will be, and it can be a beautiful thing.
Well, a couple of notes. The youth does get it, I feel. You know, my son, it was about 2 years ago, they brought in a drug counselor to the school and started telling everybody how bad drugs were, and they got on the topic marijuana. And my son raised his hand right away and he said, if marijuana is so bad for you, why do they prescribe it for medicinal purposes? And I've always taught him to challenge, you know, his teachers. And I said, what did she say after you said that? And he said, she shut up. I said, what do you mean she shut up? And he said, she just stopped talking. And you can't argue with facts anymore. There's no long-term side effects that are any more detrimental to any of the approved drugs that are on the market, which not even including pharmaceuticals. I'm talking about alcohol or tobacco. And all it ever has caused people is to, I think, feel a little bit lighter, happier, more peaceful. It's a calming, beneficial plant to our even our endocannabinoid system. So
Yeah.
I feel that they can't tell these lies anymore. They use propaganda. They use the war on drugs. They use all these things, and The amount of money spent on jailing people for marijuana, I forget I don't even know the number, but it's exorbitant amount of money that's spent every year policing and jailing uh, people selling a plant that's not addictive, that's not a narcotic, that it only makes people happier, I feel. So that time I feel is coming, and I wanted to touch base on the policy part you mentioned too. um, Policies played a big role on keeping this plant from the people, and I think it's just ridiculous that we even have these conversations on doing R&D on a plant that was the first plant we cultivized as a society, as over 10,000 years ago. We knew inherently through our intuition that this plant was one of the most beneficial plants for us. And in my mind, there's been 10,000 years of research already been done, and now they're trying to take us back to ground zero. So I want to call on the people that are passionate about the space and the advocates for the space to really not. I don't want to put up with these rules on demonizing a plant any longer that is a miracle plant.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have an endocannabinoid system where our bodies produce cannabinoids that have the same molecular structure as the cannabinoids in the plant is proof that we were meant to live symbiotically with this plant. And the more that we explain that to people and the more we understand it, the better. Um, you know, when you think about when you were young and you were learning about the different systems in your body, the digestive system and the respiratory system and the nervous system, and here we have this system that's actually the master modulator of all those other systems. And it wasn't until the 80s or 90s that it was really discovered. I mean, now at least we have a group of endocannabinoid scientists that are trying to catch up, but we lost those 80 plus years of innovation and research. And like you said, we can look back to the 10,000 years and see that humans have interacted with the plant. But the last 80 was a big loss. So hopefully with the technology that we have, and hopefully with the changing of policies and regulation, people will be more open to it. I don't think that, for years and years and years, education around this plant came from, police officers pushing into classrooms to talk about drugs as part of that war on drugs, part of that DARE program. And it was not only, it was actually dangerous information. And I can tell you firsthand that, I have an older son who I have his permission to say that he's in recovery from opiate addiction. It's been a ride. He uses cannabis to help him get through it. But when he was in those classes and he knew that what they were telling him about marijuana was a lie, he understood, or he thought, well, then everything else, every other warning they're telling me about, every drug they're talking about must also be a lie. And therefore, that education gave him a mindset of, being open to trying things that were more harmful and more addicting. So I actually, can trace that in part back to the poor education that we have around this plant. And I'm hoping that with every fiber of my being, because this is part of my passion and why I'm such a supporter of the plant, has to do with my journey with my son. It's the answer to so many things, and we can start looking at how to self-care and everything else we do, whether it's meditation, yoga, all of these things that we're learning about or have been around for a long time, but we're now starting to embrace. This plant is a part of that. It's a part of a self-care routine. It's a part of making sure that you are optimizing your health. And the more we learn about it, we're only scratching the surface, but the more we learn about it, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Yeah, no, I still think education on this plant is one of the top things needed today, largely to policymakers, not even just in the United States, around the world. In other countries, I know that the policy is even stricter and harsher than the United States. But I heard some news that the UN is actually going to be decriminalizing um, hemp as a Schedule One drug, and I think that's going to be a substantial measurement. Countries around the world, if they were getting foreign aid, many of the organizations, if they grew hemp as a country, they would be eliminated from receiving foreign aid because they were growing a Schedule One drug. So by decriminalizing on the United Nations levels, I think it's going to open up a lot of things. And I'm very hopeful for what hemp can do, and where it's going, and being connected with people like you that are pushing all the initiatives around health and awareness. It's very humbling and grateful. And I think the next 5 years is going to be a pretty wild ride in the hemp space, and what's going to happen, from housing to clothing to food to medicine to fuel. Once I think the cat's out of the bag, and I don't think they can put it back in the bag. And just like you said, the clear winner of the election was cannabis. Everywhere it's on the ballot, it gets voted for. So I think we have a bright future. I've been called an internal optimist, and I'm going to stay that way. And we have about 2 more minutes until my next guest. But in that time, Melissa, could you give us some parting words about how you feel people can take direct action?
Well, I think you were just talking about. I think education is the key. I think that the more we know about the plant, the more we break through the stigmas, the more we understand the potential of the plant, the better the science, the better the applications become. And so if each person just opens their hearts and their minds and learns a little bit about the plant, and then tells another person, and that person tells another person, that's how we're going to spread the word. And the work that you're doing to create a an example of how hemp can create its own economic ecosystem, and then replicating that across the globe is a really good way to spend your energy and to connect the dots so that we can move forward. I know that humans were meant to live with this plant. I think that reconnecting humans with this plant is going to go a long way towards humanity. That's why I named my company Hemp and Humanity. I really think that it's that deep. This plant has so much potential, and I'm hoping that the younger generations. Well, I know that they're already doing it. I know they have more opportunities to study cannabis and to study regenerative agriculture and sustainability in university, and even locally. So community colleges and so forth. So I think that educating the public is really the way to go. And if everyone, even if it's informal, even if it's saying, I saw this, I was at this conference today, and here's what I learned, and then that person tells somebody else. And people are eager for that information. They really do want to know more about the plant. So it's on all of us to make those little steps.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and also thinking local. I think people should start demanding more hemp products in their stores. Go to your local grocery store, start asking for more hemp products. Your hardware stores, ask where the products are, and even bring them the options. If you know a hemp company that's creating products, start promoting it to the local stores. And the grassroots movement and the Think Local movement, I think, is a big part of this plant. It's a communal plant, so. Yeah, education, awareness.
Maybe in the future, the whole grassroots thing is going to be hemp roots. We'll get that far that we. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I got my next coming on in 1 minute. Hannah, actually, Hannah, with Hemp the Climate. Actually, the same day that I connected with Hannah on LinkedIn, she sent you her Hemp SDG book in the mail.
Well, and I also have the benefit of having spent time with Hannah last year at Hemp Industries Association conference, and she got a chance to sign a copy personally. We had a really good time getting to know each other. I think she's amazing. Hi, Hannah.
And, hi, Melissa.
she's such an inspiration to me and so many others. And you're so lucky to have her at this conference. So I'm humbled that I'm preceding her.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, looking forward.
All right. Bye. Great.
Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
Well, welcome, Hannah. We were just speaking your grace, and I was mentioning that the same day we connected on LinkedIn, she got a copy of your book in the mail. She sent me on the SDGs, and yeah, thank you for joining us. Hannah is in Serbia.
Czech
Hannah's
Republic.
been Czech. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Other
No
guest
worries.
earlier. Hannah's in Czech Republic. She's been in the hemp space for almost 20 years, pioneering sustainable development, awareness, education around policy, around the industrial uses of the plant. She's got a farm in the Czech Republic, and I got connected through one of my partners with Hannah, David Rosenstein, who's been an advocate for the sustainable uses of this plant. And we're here today talking about how this plant could be a blueprint for a better future, a sustainable future. And the topics that we're going to be touching base on is I think the Sustainable Development Goals, education and awareness for
Mm-hmm.
policymakers, and some of the work that you're doing. So we can start. I would love to start with a little bit of a background on you, Hannah, and if you could spend a couple of minutes talking about your experience with the plant and how you got started in hemp.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I started like really like researching hemp when I was in the agriculture university in Czech Republic. So I took like topic of my thesis industrial hemp use in Czech Republic. And so it was like first opportunity to really go deeper in the topic and yeah, read some few books which was available. One of this book was the Jack Herer book, like this like Emperor Has No Clouds, which really like changed my view on like till now till the time I was just like user of marijuana, and then I was like really wanting to like understand like what I'm using every day. So yeah, so it really opened my eyes, and then all the opportunity for replacing the fossil fuels and like being able to like develop local communities based on all the sources what hemp can bring. So I was really amazed, and because I like part of my soul, I've been working as a like environmentalist, or I was working before my like hemp career. I was working for NGO focus on the clean energy, renewable energy. I was working on the uranium mining issues, like nuclear final depository issues, and there is not really like solutions. Yeah, and then like I was like voluntarily working for this like all NGO on hemp, and it really kind of like brought me to do it like full time because it was less frustration. There was like the really like working on the solution instead of like studying something which is not really helping anything and trying to stop it, which is impossible. So when you observe more deep like what's all about like the dirty energy is, you really want to stop that, but then you realize that you have no power. So I find the power in the hemp, and I start to follow hemp, and started company 2010, and started to grow hemp with the farm, which is not mine, but I co-work or cooperate with the farm, which is 600 hectares. They have like pigs and cows production, own organic meat production, own slaughtery, or own also biogas power station. So we have own heat and own cheap kind of electricity. So it's kind of nice co-work at the farm. So if I don't need to build up infrastructure. It's already there. I just like rent the place and pay for it, which is nice. So it gives me a lot of opportunity also like travel and not be in this everyday like farming rhythm, which hardly let you go travel for half of the year like I did before COVID. So yeah, so this is kind of my journey, which brought me to work also on the policy because I really wanted to change. Like, I didn't understand why hemp is legal, like why it's so big, like problems with like implementing in the agriculture like sector. So I was like studying deeper, and end up in like lobbying in the United Nations, in the where all the troubles coming from because of the single convention, which was um, signed in 1961, that like prohibit cannabis growing, especially harvesting for cannabis tops, which very much complicate nowadays topic, especially with the hemp flower in Europe, but many parts of the world as well. And yeah, so I ended up lobbying there, but my topic was always sustainability. So I started to do some statements about that topic. Later on, I connected with the Kenzie Zimoli and Michael Kravitz, who've been like long time activists. They was like working and lobbying on the WHO, and now we have this big vote coming in December about cannabis descheduling, kind of like vote on the cannabis cannabis descheduling recommendation from WHO. So it's kind of like scientific approach on like changing something which wasn't really evaluated in scientific base. So like they bringing science in the policy, which policy kind of like don't really happy about that, or kind of like can't agree by consensus, how they always have to agree in this like UN levels. So let's see what's happened. They are putting together some interesting like statement as our network to remind them what their responsibility is, and hopefully the vote will pass it and change the perspective on the cannabis, at least as a medicine and not only as a drug. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of my journey through the years.
Well, and just like when it was about 10 years ago for me when I discovered the hemp plant, and I couldn't understand why this plant was illegal, and that kind of put me on my journey of researching and networking and being an enthusiast for the plant. And the book you've put together on the Sustainable Development Goals. I know I've sent you a copy of the deck I put together. It's a shorter version, but when I saw your deck on that, and it was, let me know that we were on the right path. That there's a lot more people thinking about how hemp can play a direct role in all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Um, and
Hi.
your work on educating the big. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. All right.
Okay. Yeah, your work on the Sustainable Development Goals and how hemp can affect each one is big. I think people still don't know, especially people in government, don't know all the different benefits they can make. And I think the science is out now, that they can no longer hide from it. And I think we're going to live in a pretty transitional time. Um, of all the Sustainable Development Goals, would you? I'd like to highlight to the audience the ones that you think are going to be the direct ones that impact, kind of step one. Is it going to be with housing or energy or clothing or food? Which ones do you see hemp going to be making a bigger impact first?
Like the industry innovation and like material innovation, because like as a hemp, it's like great material source which can be available everywhere and can be kind of like implemented with so many levels of the human like being, like lifestyle. So I think like it's this like industrial applications kind of because this is what we are, and also like the climate, also the agriculture. It's hard to decide. I never really get in the sustainable development goals so deep to really like compare. Oh, this is like we have to always start to talk about that. I think it's very complex, and thanks to God we have at least like 17 like points which somebody smart evaluated, so kind of summarize where we need to go and where we need to focus for the next decade. And yeah, we just presented this book basically, which came out from the conference we did in the United Nations in the end of the 2018, when we expected the first vote on the cannabis descheduling. It didn't happen. Hopefully it's going to happen this year. And this is like what I see, kind of like a bad sign, that they don't even like want to decide about something which is so clear that it's like scientific based, like does not harm anybody, it has no latent doses. And they still have a problem, even agreed on that, and help so many people around the world to use this medicine as like kind of another option for their kind of like quality of the life, so I think this is a very difficult, and this December is a real time to change it. So I hope the government will be ready for like right vote, and because if not, it's good. I know it's going to happen. Like we can still grow hemp. We can still use it for so many like different like application and products, but I'm not sure like without like the medicinal use we will be able to really like do big change, because in the end of the day, now it's the time when everybody needs to keep their health high, because of these health issues which going on, why we cannot travel, and soon we will have uh, need to have some kind of like general medicine to help us improve the health. And of course, like hemp can help all the other different ways, like build the healthy houses, produce the healthy food, and all these we should use. But since we are not even able to agree on hemp as a medicine, or cannabis as a medicine, it's, I think it's very critical, kind of like undermining the quality of the life of somebody else and the freedom for a choice of what you want to use as your own medicine. It's kind of very bad sign in this like world where we all the time talking about freedom and democracy. Yeah, but I believe hemp and probably the climate topic will be also important, because hemp can sequestrate a lot of carbon, improve the soil, so it can help us a lot of issues we facing now. So I believe this is like very good article, very good option, and one day I hope we will be like able to evaluate our like good steps towards the kind of like local economy and like the bioeconomy. I've been working with the last like half year on the European Commission group called Focus Group EU Agri. It was the topic was there industrial sustainable crops, and it was producing like 5 minute papers to recommend European Commission how they have to lead the farming and agriculture sector towards this Green Deal and bioeconomy and the replacement of the fossil fuels, where hemp in the group between like around 20 experts was kind of like well discussed and deep. So I hope it can reach out some right people on the top levels to really like decide for hemp and for its support on the European level. Because till now we don't have even like harmonized the regulation on the European level, which is very sad and which kind of like not helping the business and trade. So
Yeah, no, it's an interesting journey that hemp is on, and it's being in it for so long, like yourself, you've seen a lot of the changes and a lot of the things transpire. And I think building materials, like you mentioned, materials in general are going to be kind of the things that jump in. A lot of this stuff can be integrated into local different manufacturing processes already. And that's some of the work that I know you're doing, is you're looking to reach out to larger organizations to start looking at hemp seriously to as a substitute, material for them to manufacture with. Could you talk a little bit about your journey there? I think that's one of the things that needs to happen to really get adoption, is to have larger groups come in and say, I'm gonna use this local regenerative material?
Yeah, we put together the organization called Hemp the Climate, where we put all the advisors from the hemp industry together to to be able to advise companies which want to, for example, replace their plastic packaging with like hemp packaging, or when they want to like replace wood material by hemp material, and to be able to deliver them kind of like study how they can do that, and to kind of like connect them with the people from hemp world who already able to bring them the solution. So it's kind of like helping bridge the hemp industry, which has a lot of solutions, but it's hard to find them. It's a big jungle, not really well organized since we are such a young industry, not much standards done. So I think there is a lot of homework to be done from our side as a hemp industry, but we have definitely great showcase studies, but we should not be afraid to share and kind of bring on the table to at least discuss how to scale it up or how to do it on the different regions or levels of the size of the industry. So I believe there is a lot of work done, especially for the like plastic paper building. Maybe like the paper, it's not the big scale yet anywhere else as far as I know in the world, like so there is a lot of big potential, but the building definitely going on in Europe big time, and in US as well. And the hemp food increasing every year, the fiber increase, it's like the demand, it's huge. And only reason why we don't reaching it yet, because we are not enough big to be able to supply such a big demand. Yeah, so I think there is still need to really like build a real infrastructure to be able to do the impact what we want to see in the like practice, and not just like have like few showcase studies around the world. So I think like great opportunity for the investors who believe in the green industry, and some kind of like co-working and like impacting planet in the great way, and building it as a like nice place for our kids, and not leaving it like how's it now, I hope.
Yeah, no, I do feel that it's starting to turn. The even capital in general is being more cognizant of environmental social good investing. People wanting to diversify, getting investments into things that actually improving the planet rather than you know destroying the planet. So I do see these investment vehicles coming online, and I know one of the things we've talked about on how we can have an investment vehicle for communities in local regions to get the proper funding is a sustainable development hemp goal. Is one of the things we've talked about. And so the idea, the framework is, imagine if a region, a county, a city, a state, a country could raise their own bond through the municipality, but also the community. So local people can micro invest into their own hemp production, because the manufacturing needs to be set up in just about every region. And I think, as far as our work, and I think the plant in general, it's a communal plant. The more people that benefit it from, the best. And so we've been pushing some work around a bond, a hemp bond, with David Cam with Unlimited Hemp, and we've been in talks about collaborating on that. I'd like to learn more about you, talk more about your hemp alliance with Hemp the Climate, and some of the initiatives there. I know we've talked about how these alliances could really help educate, bring in the right resources and components needed for areas to really jump on board.
Yeah, like just a co-work. Yeah, teamwork is the dream work. So I believe really like if we just like helping each other. There's a lot of competition in hemp industry, kind of like very unhealthy competition. Like we are like so small industry. I we already compete like there is so much place for everybody. Yeah, like so much like opportunities. There is like no really like need to compete so big time. Like if we co-work, we will like all grow much faster and even be able to give work much more and other people, and like build it up, really like build it up all together, because like since we compete, we are not able to even like create our own standards, which are really like critical, even like to talk to the regulators. And then we struggle with the regulation, and regulators are not the right people who are going to write our own regulation. What we need for our support, we need to kind of lobby for ourselves a little bit better way. And I think that the SDGs are really good, kind of like open door tool to kind of like click on the door and somebody important, what you have. Oh, I have something which kind of like works great with the SDGs. Oh, this is I have on the table. I need to solve it. Come in, If you come with like look like, cannabis has no support, blah blah blah. They don't wanna hear that. They even like know about cannabis, so much, except that's drug. Yeah, I've been talking today with somebody from the Czech government, like official, helping like Czech businesses getting set up in US, and he was mixing up the word hemp and marijuana all the time, even like till the end of discussion. Your marijuana seed you going to import? I was like, all right. So it's a big stigma still in the people's head, and you hardly change it just because you see the difference. So we need to link it hemp with somebody else, because if you just talk hemp and not like hemp and SDGs, so they have like this like nice link somewhere else that like marijuana link, then they get it. They are happy to take it. Just like if we don't like we talk hemp and then they like which box I should put hemp. Yeah, I heard marijuana. It's like similar, but like I don't know like else something than marijuana. So it's the association of hemp. It's still kind of not really clear in many people. And if we talk more, hemp can do this because uh, we already have like examples here in this SDG book, for example. You can read it, you can see them. Yeah, so there is the way. Yeah, it will be great to create
And
kind of platform where we can share all the case studies. Yeah, show all in one.
yeah. The every day that I work on this plant, work in this industry, I learn something new about it still, and it's education is still the top thing I feel of getting this plant out to more people, it's CBD is popularized the plant, I think, but that's just one of the many uses. And your work at Hemp the Climate and is it's hemptheclimate.com, correct?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Building that alliance, showing these cases, I think is a big component to this. And when people can see things and touch it and feel it, I think it's another level. And so you're working on improving those studies and those standards. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. The work you're doing on creating the standards around hemp, and how that is one of the things that need to be put in place to create a playing field that everyone can kind of abide by. Can you talk about a little bit of your work on the standards you've been working on?
Yes. I joined the cannabis committee D37 under ASTM, which is the US organization helping create the standards, the industry. Basically it's a networking platform. They don't do the standards, they just create a space for the industry, so the industry can somehow create the standard transparent and cooperative way. Yeah, so there are people in the cannabis committee, so everybody from them can like sign in the standards, then invite people from the committee to join and comment, and if they agree on something in the end, they can pass it to the higher committee, and then it gets agreed if it's good one. So it's probably more complicated. I said it some simple way, just like the people can understand. And there are many companies who work on the cannabis standards, and they provide them, but it's kind of not really much independent standards. These are standards which was created by companies, which is nothing wrong. But it would be great to have more like that, at least to start work on something independent, to have something working on the global level. Yeah, because usually the company standard is created for special needs of some one company or for some local industry, that they agree farmers in one region for some standards because they want to like sell their product all together to some same class, which is like big corporate. Because usually the standards are not need when you are a small company and selling like your product boutique. But if you want to go offer your product in the big corporate companies or global market, they need the standard. They need to be sure that like every time you supply them the same quality, that their clients who they have millions are not coming to complain about your particular product because it will be their nightmare. So the standard is really important if we want to go bigger. What we want, everybody like in hemp industry deem like hemp industry going to change the world. It's going to change the world if we will be ready for that. And it means to really like do our own homework and standards. So we had some ASTM conference like 2 weeks ago, about standards and like where we are and where we need to go. Still, people can join the ASTM D37 Cannabis Committee and helping standards. We have standards, quite good one from Canada about the hemp seeds for food. We have few standards for hemp as a building material, but we need to cover all the value chain of hemp production, from like beginning till the end, for all the products. If we want to really like see it in all the levels of possible applications. So it's a lot of work, and sooner or later we will be pushed there more and more, since we're going like bigger and bigger scale and like a bigger market. So we cannot avoid it.
And
We just like can slow it down by like ignoring that. Yeah.
yeah, no, and I totally understand what you're saying when like these standards aren't in place yet. So how is a large scale manufacturer going to jump in if they don't know if they can get the quality product to keep to keep up with the production? So if a group like Levi's or Patagonia or whoever it is are going to be in the hemp space, they have to make sure that they can get a steady access to it. And that's kind of where we're at, is that the manufacturing and the awareness and the education and the policy and all these things are kind of all coming together right now. I mean, it was just legalized in the United States not even 2 years ago now. So it's it's kind of that chicken and the egg thing that people say, but the people like us and that we work with I know are driven and constantly pushing the needle forward to get this information out to help make the change it can. I know when I got caught up with this plant, I knew it could do some of the most amount of good for the environment and the planet. And one of my friends, Michael Zaitsev with High NY, he told me in a meeting once that once he discovered this plant, he knew if he spent the rest of his life working on it, it'd be time well spent. And I couldn't think of a more truer statement. The work that's needed to be done for this plant, I think, can have the most amount of impact for the most amount of people. And the people that I've been connected to through this journey are the ones that have the vision and the hearts to really bring this all together. And I'm really grateful to have met you, Hannah, and it'd be privileged to know of all the work that you're doing in collaborating. Thank you.
Thank you too for invitation, and yeah, looking forward to work together. Don't forget, like,
Great.
teamwork is the dream
And then,
work, so we
yeah, for
can make
sure.
our dream.
It's a
All right.
collective dream, so it's fun to do. So, a couple of things before we go here. I'd like to get your take on what you feel is 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 going to be the initial steps that the everyday person can take to help bring hemp into the future. What do you feel that individuals can do to help this along?
I think just like think hemp. So like if you make like hemp part of your daily life on any level, just you will like to wear it, you will like to eat it, even like you will like talk about that. So you're making impact. You will like to share it, like education, whatever. Just like every day a little bit. It's going to be a lot what you can do, and you will become like inspiring for the others, and you will become a healthy person, and yeah, probably a better person as well. By like yeah, having like being the inspiring for the others and something like new. And study, yeah, just like study and try to find yourself, and in the hemp industry, because we can be more and do it faster. I don't know. I just like feel we are not enough for such a like big change in hemp. Yeah, like hemp, it's like very little like industry. If I see like talking even like about like in hemp industry in Europe, we are still very small. We have like 50,000 hectares. It's like nothing compared all the hectares in Europe for agriculture. You know. So when I ask like my colleagues like why the European Union does not really like respect us, they will respect us when you grow like up to 100,000. I was like, all right. So we still like nothing. Still like I don't know, like cork industry or something, you know.
Well, yeah,
So
and I really appreciate that too. If you want to help the hemp industry, buy hemp products. Start including in your daily life. I think that's one of the first actions that
you're
people can
creating
take.
demand, and there like everything like starts, you know. So just like
Voting with your dollar. Yeah.
yeah, it's your vote also. Like how you spend your money, it's your vote about like the money energy you're giving. So also like if you start to spend your like money in the hemp, you kind of like help support hemp. It's like only way. Or if you have free time, you can always join some NGO on hemp and like do some translations or whatever. You know, like, it's like volunteering. It's like not forbidden anytime. And always
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, and yeah, getting the voting with your dollar, I think, still the one of the biggest impacts that we can do, on a daily basis. And when hemp can affect every part of your life, there's no reason why we shouldn't have it in. So I appreciate that sentiment very much. And how can the guests in the audience find your work and get a hold of the book on cannabis and the SDGs?
Well, we have my company webpage. It's a hemppointed.cz, where it's a lot of information in English on it, blog. So if I do something, I just like put it on my company page. But there is also Kansas webpage, or there is a Hemp Decline Myth webpage. So there is an Encode webpage. I do like so many like networking with so many great people around the globe that I can hardly like tell them here like all. But if somebody like check my webpage, you will find the work of all my great like colleagues. Because if it's something great like on, I always publish that. And also I work like together with the Hemp Today, which is a cannabis media or hemp media. And there is a lot of information about hemp and what's going on and what's important to follow, and all the great like new project of the people from all around the world. So probably the best like follow the Hemp Today, because it's my networking partner, the biggest one. We did before the COVID times. many like super successful hemp summits around the globe, two in Kathmandu in Nepal, one in Latin America, a few of them at his place in Poland in the little palace. And yeah, so it's a great place for networking and also presenting something what you do. So even you want to be on because you do something cool, let us know. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Like you can find me online and just like get in touch if you have something what you like to share. I'm always happy to hear from people who trying to like at least like understand and it's support or discuss or share. Great to hear. Yeah, thank you.
Well, great, and yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time today,
You're welcome.
and all your amazing work.
Welcome, Steven. Thank you for invitation. Have a great time here.
Great. And there we go. Here is the man, Bert James. How are you this morning?
Good, Stephen. How are you?
Good. I'm just you fix my camera for a second so I can not fiddle with it. There we go. Bert James on the stage today. Everyone, Bert and I have been collaborating for about 2 years. I got introduced by Bert James via Christian Share with the Regen Network. Bert and I both have a passion for regenerative agriculture and tracking impact. Bert's been a regenerative ag consultant for 20 years out of North Carolina. He's a lifelong farmer. He's helped start one of the larger cooperatives in hemp in the United States, BioRegen Co-op. And he's also got a product line, Root to Flower. Mm-hmm. They do some CBD products. Bert's one of our senior advisors and one of the most knowledgeable people I would know in the entire hemp space, from not just the agricultural components, but also the manufacturing, processing, marketplace, equipment, engineering. You've made it part of your life work and passion and mission to really know the industry in and out. And you have a wealth of knowledge of all spaces. And the point of this talk today is to educate the audience on how hemp can be a blueprint for a better future and how we do that. I think cooperatives are obviously I think a big part of that formula. And I mentioned the term parity earlier to the audience about keeping the economic value in the region that's derived, which we touched base on. And so I think cooperatives are a big component. Helping set up the manufacturing is another, and then getting the offtake. Who's going to be buying and actually manufacturing and processing this. But before we get into all that, Bert, I'd like for you to give you a little intro on some of your work and how you got involved with the plant.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for the kind words, Stephen. And it is a proper description that I've been a crop consultant for 20 years. But I want to be honest with anybody who's watching that it wasn't until about 10 years ago that we began to transition to a more regenerative approach. And 5 years ago, we actually began the BioRegen Co-op, which is the tag for bioregenerative. So at any rate, thanks for having me, Stephen. I'm involved in quite a lot, and it's kind of a consultant's mindset to try to learn as much as you can about the market, because that tends to affect what the farmers need to know. So I enjoy a consultant's approach to many different aspects of the business. So that's where I kind of started doing my homework. We stumbled onto the hemp opportunity in our state. We had a unique, stumbling block there where they put a $200,000 price tag that constituents had to raise. That turned out to be a real opportunity because our farmers in our region jumped all over it. And for that reason, we kind of got the reputation that our state kind of got it right from a cooperation standpoint. And I think a lot of people still watch North Carolina because we do have such a strong relationship between the farmers, universities, the extension system. Every state's got a lot of resources, but I'm super excited to be here because we do have a lot of support for the industry. But I'd say right now, primary things I'm working on are basically just to catch my breath from the last 5 years, and especially this year. It was really, really hard to make really any business plans. As soon as you'd make a plan or schedule a trip or try to get any type of forward motion, something would happen, and that's just a result of the times that we're in. So everybody hopes that 2021 will be a little smoother transition to this marketplace, and I too share that same desire and belief. I think now is the time to capitalize on everything that we want to try to accomplish. So primary things I'm working on, wrapping up a project in Wisconsin with some large trailers that are capable of quite a bit of processing capacity. We'll have a meeting actually later today to get the update, but that project is almost over, and hopefully they will land in the hands of a very good group in Wisconsin. Stephen, I know that rings a bell there with you. So we'll see what happens. That's it's a big project, and we've invested a lot of time and energy in it. So wherever those trailers land, it'll be an immediate boom to whatever industry chooses to pursue pelletized hemp, hurd, flour, resin, bass fiber, everything. So we're excited about that. Beyond that, go ahead.
No, I like to touch base on that. The kind of the holy grail of this industry expanding is having the processing available, and that's kind of one of the targets you've been focusing on. So talk to us about these modularized units a little bit, and how you came about the plans for them. I think it's a great way that farmers can even as a cooperative can invest in the their own containers that can be driven. You back?
Yeah, you're jumping in and out. I think you asked about the origin of the trailers, and let me be the first to again go back and point out that I was commissioned to basically bring those trailers to life. I had nothing to do with having them built, so I just want to be clear with you on that. We have plans for modular trailers in the future, but not the scale that these trailers were built for. So just some quick clarity there, but it's still a fantastic opportunity. So credit goes to the Canadians, World Class Extractions. They had these trailers built and commissioned to the U.S. about 2 years ago, back when everybody thought that CBD might hang around or at least be here long enough, for some type of manufacturing at scale. Turns out that has not been resurrected, and the Canadians have chosen to stay in Canada and Europe because their markets are they seem to be more solid or established. So that being said, that led to the opportunity for a U.S. company to pick these trailers up. And so I have diligently kind of stayed with that project for the year and danced around with COVID-19 probably every time I fly into Wisconsin, and then have to come home and be careful and stay away from everybody. So it's been a bit of a trying experience, but a good friend of mine in the North is helping me wrap that project up. So that'll be here before you know it. And then we're transitioning to new projects, which will be the smaller modular trailers that can be set up much easier, quicker, and in any region or university setting or research setting, and quickly get to market and revenue, which you guys touched on. You have to have the opportunities, and how do you get to those opportunities? Well, you have to drum up consumer demand, and for that to happen, you have to be able to quickly and efficiently create goods for them to buy.
Yep, I was on mute. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that these trailers are a great way that farmers can commit to start growing, because as long as they have it a process state from their fields, rather than just sitting there, they can sell it, they can ship it, they can and there's starting to be more and more demand for the hemp products. And instead of waiting for a large scale facility to be built in these regions, farmers can take the production in their own hands. And even the more they have their hands in the supply chain, the more money the farmers are going to make. So if the farmers invest into these mobile units, they can even make more money. And I guess let's talk about that for a moment. I don't want to focus on the economy too much, but can you talk about some of the economic numbers that farmers are looking to be able to make for industrial hemp? I think if farmers had a clear picture of what the inputs and what the costs of growing are, and what they're looking to be able to make per acre of hemp production, would farmers like to know the numbers,
Yeah. Right now, I work for our co-op members earlier. When we got the bill passed in North Carolina, we basically worked backwards from the production cost, and then try to do the net profit, where we would need to be to make money based on just our raw costs for the crop. And so right now, Stephen, and don't take this in a discouraging way, but it has not been a solid marketplace at all. For a lot of I enjoyed listening to you and Hannah speak about some of the industry troubles. And I think you kind of touched on that. Right now, the lack of consistency, especially in our country, everybody's trying to get it figured out. And kudos to them. I think there is room for everybody to grow and to make progress. But to your point, we're very young. It's been a while. It's been several decades since we've done this crop. It won't take us long to get it figured out. But I would caution anyone before I make any comments about the market and what you can expect to make on an acre of hemp, is that it's been my experience, while there is growing demand, be very cautious before you put any seed in the ground beyond the purpose of research. Because right now, I couldn't tell you of many viable markets anywhere near me. And that's just that's the reality of things. Once we get to more demand, more infrastructure, I can tell you that I've heard 10 cents per raw pound of fiber. That'd be a great number for farmers. I've heard of contracts for 8 cents, which is not bad. So that would be based on like maybe a 4-ton average, which is not terrible to. Yeah, it's not terrible to consider. So that would put them in, most farmers at scale are happy to make $100-150 an acre in our country. Same thing with grain. When we started looking at planting it, it was $1.20 a pound, and we were very excited about the money that we could make. Before we could get our crop harvested, it went down to 60 cents a pound, and that's kind of where it has settled out. And that's not as exciting, just to be frank. It's not a bad price, but there's quite a bit of risk. There's zero conventional tools, which a lot of people applaud, but as far as the risk factor in our region, I watched our entire crop get decimated by corn worms, which is a native pest to our region. And so I would be very cautious before I told anybody to plant seed here. So, so you see where we are. This is I don't like to rain on the parade, but I also want to be very honest with anybody who's getting in this game. It is good that you and Hannah are both very realistic with people that there's so much work to be done. There's so much potential, I think, but for the first, it took that excitement to break the ceiling, but now that it's broken, it's like, whoa, we are literally like halfway through the first step of the journey, like the first one, right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing that there's awareness and there's a generation, several generations now below us. You're younger than I am, but the young generation gets it, and they're ready to participate and they're ready to thrive. So I don't want to. That's a whole other question that I'm getting ready to answer without you asking it. But to wrap up, your for farmers, the numbers would be 8 to 10 cents a pound for raw fiber. You're looking at 60 cents ish for conventional grown grain. Probably can jump up to the $1 a pound for organic. And then beyond that, flour. Wow. For medicinal purposes, it's I'd hate to even put a number on it. There's certain reports that I read and keep up with, but one of the things I do is consult for a company here in North Carolina called Avient Biosciences, and we have been out and talked to farmers. I've recently put my hands on biomass that's been stored and that type of thing, and what was $20 to $30 a pound a year and a half ago, unfortunately, you can take the zero off those numbers, and it has cruised down to a steady $2 to $3 a pound mark, which is, we all knew it was going to get there, and you can actually jockey if you got good material. You can probably get rid of some for $6 and maybe even $10 a pound based on the the CBD percentage, but I don't know where you can, or I would have done it.
Yeah.
I've got biomass that I'm sitting on, and we're getting ready to process it and put it into crude oil. We're fortunate because we have that brand that we get to feed over the next year, but not everybody's that fortunate. And if I knew about a $10 a pound number, I would have already passed it on to my growers. I just don't know where it is.
Well, and yeah, the industry is kind of in that very beginning step, and a lot of farmers jumped into the hemp space in the last 2 years without even knowing how they're going to dry the plant or where they're going to sell it. They just thought there was a demand. And if you would have looked at all the numbers as far as the consumption of CBD oil globally, and you look at how much acreage is needed to grow it, I think it was 2019 on the demand. That's one of the things when you're in a new industry. There's not a lot of standards. There's not a lot of press set up. There's no offtake agreements. Banking is an issue. Loans, it's hard for farmers to get loans even. And that's kind of maybe the next topic I'd like to talk about is kind of around the cooperative. So building the cooperative in North Carolina and putting together this framework for farmers to get involved. Could you talk a little bit about how farmers can get financing for the space to grow hemp? What are the best resources and tools that they can have access to that you're aware of?
Limited. They're very limited. You're starting to see more. I think banks, as a rule, are getting a little more comfortable. Our banks had no problem with us growing hemp. They didn't necessarily want to assume the profit from that crop to have any basis on how much they lent us. So I'm afraid to say that you're basically on your own in a lot of ways. And in other words, if you're going out to the bank and say, hey, I'm going to grow hemp, I want a hemp loan. That's a short list. There's a growing number of resources now that they're much more creative. That's probably a better question for you to answer than even I, Stephen, as many people as you talk to on the global platform. But if you bring it down to a local North Carolina level or United States level, it's much more limited. It's a short list of people that would lend you money just so you can grow hemp. You see a lot of guys, unfortunately, you see a lot of guys taking this out of their own bank account. A lot of that money over the last several years, I've seen farmers try it. And then, of course, we'd have a weather event, we'd have a market collapse. So I've seen a lot of heartache. And, that I think this 2020 crazy was there's just a lot of icing on the cake. Everybody was ready to, win for a change. And it shut everything down once again. So cautious optimism. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of businesses now that want you to grow hemp, for the climate reasons. And so I've had a bunch of different conversations, kind of a piggyback off the co-op direction we're getting ready to go in. But, if a company can put together $8 to $10 million for infrastructure, they should add 10 or 15% for the production effort, right? We shouldn't put I guess my philosophical answer to that question is we really shouldn't be worried about having to go and borrow money to grow this crop, right? If it's borrowed money, it's not a good idea because you're going to have to pay it back. And right now it's 50-50 that you're going to get paid for your effort. So you all almost should not borrow money to grow hemp. That'd be my first answer. It should be money you have saved up for fun and like R&D as a business. And if you do go out and pursue money, there are a handful of banks that will entertain it, but you have to have a contract. They have to see that there is a bona fide offtake agreement with the ability for you to get paid, or you're just not going to get that money. And right now, there's a couple of places in the country that are starting to get some momentum, but it's just a couple. And if you think about the amount of farmers that want to grow this crop, it's a lot more than a couple. So it's definitely the financial conversation is very unique. And it also, to me, it almost needs to be tied into a regional effort. If there's going to be infrastructure built, there should be money set aside so that the farmers don't take all the risk, which is what they usually do. And I'm very proud to say that Avient Biosciences in Wilson, they have a future forecast model where they would come in and provide some of the resources and financing for the crop to be grown for their use. I think that's a great healthy trend that we might see more of.
No, yeah, I feel you. I don't think the farmers should be taking the majority of the risk. And, as far as I know, there's no subsidies yet for hemp growing in the United States. Is there?
No, the closest thing to that would be, and it's not even, you could grow hemp for a cover crop and you probably could get some subsidy money for that.
Interesting.
That's probably something that we could consider. That's probably the path of least resistance. But to my knowledge, no, Stephen, there's not any subsidy for hemp, not yet. We would hope to see that as part of a carbon initiative, maybe moving forward.
Well, even here's just a spitball idea. Even maybe the cooperatives could even work together on is the brownfields that are in regions. And I know there's federal funds to clean up brownfields. In between hemp and fungi, I think could do a lot of the solutions. And hemp wasn't able to be used to clean up the federal brownfields in the past because it was illegal to grow. So that might be an avenue for farmers to start producing hemp. And the scientists I've talked to on this actually said you can, even if the hemp plant extracts heavy metals or toxins from the field, you can still separate it from the plant and be used for additional products still. So maybe that's something that regional developments could, as one of the prongs to look to get into hemp without risk to the everyday farmer.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a great idea, Stephen. And you could even go further than that. And a lot of times metals and nutrients that accumulate in these sites, there's usually a shortage of those in other sites. So that would be a very easy way to not even get rid of it, but to redistribute it in a proper way where it's needed. And of course, you could pelletize that and spread it like fertilizer, right? Maybe an idea for
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah. No, the you could be a mineral extraction company, mining company for metals, which would even be a funny sky mining. Well, great. I know the next thing I want to talk about the co-op real quick, and then I want to get into some of the regenerative practices and benefits and solutions. But how would you recommend, if there's new regions, new farmers that are watching this out there, to form their own co-op? Because you went through a lot of um, the on the ground lessons learned. So if people want to start a co-op around hemp, what is your guidance, and do you have any tools or resources that they could have access to?
Yeah, we actually, as a co-op, that's one of our potential. We feel like maybe future revenue streams is to go ahead and take care of that money that it costs to get set up. There's some resources online, but you're still going to spend money in your region, specific to your state, your county, your laws. So we basically have a bit of a blueprint that we're considering working with different like-minded co-ops to go ahead and get that out of the way, right? Get 5 years of trial and error. Don't want to talk about how much we spent on lawyers and that type of thing. Everybody's got to eat, but I think lawyers eat pretty good based on what we've paid them. Good grief. But we did the right thing. We went and protected our farmers, and you have to have good lawyers to do that. So we went through and combed through all the state laws and that type of thing. And we got the sign off from a very prominent law firm that I do enjoy working with. And they're very professional, and we wouldn't be where we are without them. So, you talk about how much you pay them in one breath, but then you're like, wow, they did a great job. So I think I would tell any group that wants to get a co-op together that you have to get a core group that philosophically believes in a set of goals and values. That comes first. For the co-op we built, there was that core value team that had the idea that pushed the agenda. And then if I'm being completely honest with you, Stephen, I went out and as best as I could explain that what we were trying to do. But at the end of the day, we got lost just a little bit in funding the hemp initiative, right? So we were the bioregenerative co-op, and we truly did think that hemp was going to be grain and fiber. We didn't know anything about CBD. We thought CBD was a bubble that would pop in 2016. Think about that. So we didn't pay any attention to CBD. You're like, oh yeah, that's all right. That's here and gone. That's not going to last. And so we pursued grain first. That was our first out. We figured we'd try that out. And so then we start looking over our shoulder, and all we see is these plants being flown in from Colorado and blah blah blah. And we quickly realized that as much as people like to talk about grain and fiber, I'd say 80% of the energy and the conferences that we went to, that was all a fuel tank for CBD. I really looking back on that, there were a lot of people that were fanning the flame and the energy of hemp's usefulness for everything that you can touch and feel and do. But at the end of the day, they were just waiting. So as soon as our bill passed and we wrote some pretty good, helped the legislators write some pretty good laws, the whole country descended on North Carolina. Like people, from all over the country, and they were, for the most part, they were from, Colorado, Kentucky, California, Oregon, those states that either had a hemp history and or a marijuana history. And I don't have to tell you that got a little bit awkward, let's say. And really, it's not what we hope to accomplish. I'll say that. We didn't want the circus to come to town. And no offense to anybody from other states, because we love people, we love farmers and professionals from all over. But fair to say that things got a little bit out of hand with CBD. I'll leave it there. So long story short, we're almost back to where we started 5 years ago, where it turns out CBD was that bubble. It certainly popped, and there is a huge mess to clean up. And while it's not going to go away, and we have forgotten what a beautiful gift that all those molecules are, I think that that's getting ready to be remembered. And now that it's gotten away from this mega rich, get me out of jail crop that a lot of farmers thought it was, it's now time to go back and revisit just what it's capable of, and what we accomplished, right, as a state, as a country. It's just being overlooked that now all these little pockets of the country can grow hemp, and they got some pretty good medicine for a lot what ails you. So I didn't mean to segue down that history too far there, Stephen, but I believe that it goes back to the core values. We had some adversity, but we're still here. I'm proud to say that. I actually had a management contract, one of my businesses that I worked through. We were going to manage the co-op, and we got that signed off in March. And turns out there's a pandemic on our doorstep. And I think we wisely didn't engage in anything, in any contracts. We kind of started seeing things get a little bit loose. And we had already seen some failure and some people not show up to pay contracts. And we had a hurricane or two that weren't exactly our friends here. But I say we're set to strike. I've got more conventional ideas for the co-op. And I've got some really creative things that would engage a lot of the community surrounding the co-op. So I would encourage a lot of people to consider at least to create a vehicle in your co-op where you can then begin to work with other people that would like to see you succeed, and get away from that conventional mindset of, oh yeah, we've got to go out and borrow $2.5 million if we're going to do fiber. That might not be the case. I think that as we move forward, you're going to see some money floating around if you're growing the right crop for the right reason in the right way. You're going to see some opportunity at your doorstep. And so I think that's the creativity of the co-op model, is to have that path for somebody to step in and help you out with whatever infrastructure you might need to be successful. So I'm very excited about the co-op model still. But much like regenerative agriculture, a co-op is a work in progress. Christian Shearer, the person that introduced us, that's one of my favorite things that he said about Regen Ag. He said, it's more than a lifetime of work because it never stops, right? It's always a path to what's next. It's this beautiful thing that keeps on evolving out in front of you. And so you're never really done with, building regenerative ag. And I feel the same about cooperatives. As we move forward, I think there's always something to add that would bring value to the members. And so
nice.
I'm hoping that we find them all in good spirits. It's been a tough year. And we got so big so quick. It's harder than you think to communicate and coordinate, over 100 guys and ladies. So right now we have addressed that, and I figured out a way to, engage a smaller group that would speak for the larger group. And it's just easier to get a smaller group together. So we'll have a board meeting pretty quick to discuss that. But all in all, we're excited. And I think the co-op model is a way to share risk and not get so far behind the 8 ball.
Nice. And if anyone's watching, they can find that at bioregencoop.com. And yeah, I'd like to get into the regenerative principles a little bit. Like you said, we got connected through Christian Shearer. And so I'll give a little bit of an introduction of what Christian's working on. So they're working on tracking the regenerative impact from agriculture on an ecosystem level. So if farmers decide to do cover cropping or no-till agriculture, they're looking to track the total ecosystem impact: carbon sequestered, oxygen produced, lack of chemicals needed, water, all across the board. And there's new value metrics that we can even that they're putting on that via blockchain. And that's a lot of my work over the last 3 years has been in a principle called natural capital accounting. And for the audience, that's about a 25-year study through the World Bank and the UN and many global universities that simply puts value on living ecosystems. And the more you improve an ecosystem, the more valuable it's worth. And so that's a lot of the work that that both David Cam, the founder of this event, and myself and our network are working on, including Bert. So two things. I'd like to talk about the actual regenerative principles that we mentioned and the benefits to the ecosystem as a whole, and then also a potential new value streams for farmers for improving the land. So first question on the regenerative ag, that's where I got involved in hemp, is I thought it was the most beneficial thing we could do for the planet. And so if you could talk about some of the science and research on regenerative ag and the benefits it could do for the planet, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'll just jump right into the hard part, Stephen. And there's a lot of smarter people than I am that can get into some of the soil health. And I'm a student, but I'm a student. I'm not an expert yet. But it goes back to what Christian Shearer said. You can a lifetime of learning. So in reality, everybody's a student. Even if they think they're an expert, they're truly a student. But so hemp was the regenerative cornerstone for so many conversations because of its insane plant density, its population density. Compared to conventional crops that we grow, a cotton acre might have 35,000 plants per acre. Corn, very similar, bounces between that 30 and 40,000 plants per acre. Soybeans, still less than 100,000. Hemp comes on the scene, and all of a sudden it's starting out at maybe 1 million plants per acre, right? Small seed, very much like some other crops. The more dense that you plant it, the more it competes, the taller it grows. And there's a lot of that goes into what you need out of the crop. It's responsive to those plant densities and populations. But the number one thing that people tout hemp, and a lot of it has been actually false, just so we're clear. A lot of things have been debunked, and a lot of that conference energy has been, kind of calmed down to say, whoa. It's a plant. It's living and breathing just like we are. There's certain things that it has to have that are beyond what it can find on whatever ground that you throw it on, right? So that's been said. But ironically, the plant density is what sequesters carbon. What I have found is, and there's some people doing great work, and I'm not saying they're not succeeding, but given as a whole, the crop requires a pretty healthy amount of tillage to get established in a conventional ag setting like we're used to seeing, for that consistency you spoke of that manufacturers are going to need to see and have. So there's probably the most work that needs to be done in the next growing season and the few seasons after that is the right recipe to get a full-blown hemp crop established in a more reduced tillage, no-till way, so that it can be a true regenerative superhero like it was meant to be. As it stands, there's probably some measurement needs to happen. Like if you're going across the field 5 or 6 times to prepare the land before you even put the hemp in the field, well, every single pass and every single time that you till that soil, that's not regenerative at all, right? That's not what we want at all. And so I think that real conversation needs to be had, and I'm starting to hear it kind of more than I did to start with. But the genetics are going to need to be manipulated to kind of pop out of the ground like the crops that we're used to seeing now. Everybody takes for granted. Everybody likes to get bent out of shape with monocultures and conventional ag and the systems that are in place. And trust me, I'm well aware of some of the the shortcomings that that industry has. But you also have to take full inventory of the work and the science that has been done, so that literally a lot of that seed, you can just literally broadcast it and maybe throw a little bit of grass or dirt over it and just a minute amount of water, and it's everywhere. It just, that's one of the first things that they breed into these crops is emergence and survivability, so that the farmer doesn't have to go back and replant it. Hemp, it's got some of those characteristics, but once you leave Europe and even Canada, for the most part, in its wild state, most plants drop their seed and they like to get tortured before they come back up. They like to get frozen and dry and covered in dirt and buried and stepped on, and then they'll come up in 6 months. So when we're taking these plants and shaking the seed and capturing it and then preserving it like we should, and you put it in the ground in the spring, it might want to come up right then, and it might not. It's kind of, a lot of this hemp seed still has a mind of its own. And I'm speaking from experience, Stephen. I'm not saying we're the best farmers, but I saw some of the best farmers I know really have a hard time with hemp, like really have a hard time. And so it was just those hard lessons learned. Now we get to pass that on. And so we struggled planting it in a conventional dance floor environment, like conventional tillage, the whole shooting match, and we still struggle. So if you think about now trying to get the seed to pop up in a no-till environment, you better have your soil in really good shape. And in all reality, you better have treated that seed with some type of stimulus to get it to germinate and emerge. So I'm going down the consultant trail a little bit. I apologize. You can tell what I'm most interested in when you ask a question. I started.
No, I like it.
Yeah, immediately going into the crop consultant, like the details of what needs to happen. But that's my regenerative pitch for the plant. Everything you said, it can be used to remediate soil. It is an efficient grower. It does not need as much conventional fertilizer as other crops. And we're going to see both. We're going to see organic. We're going to see conventional, and that's fine. I think we need to not be so caught up and worried about the perfect production model. We need to get going and then not let it get manipulated like other crops have. And we don't need a monoculture. I'm not saying that, but for the most part, it is a regenerative superstar because it captures so much carbon. And it can be done in a very efficient way. So we just have to find that efficient way so that we don't lose some of that regenerative value.
Yeah, great. And with more and more information coming out on regenerative ag, I think it's a kind of a movement. The Kiss the Ground movie that Finian, Makepeace, and his partners created. There's another one that was out a handful of years ago called Dirt, A Love Story, which is another great one. And dirt has a direct impact on our climate in many different ways. Most people don't realize. But our agriculture affects everything from the carbon being released from tilling. And people don't realize that dirt normally isn't bare. It has something to cover over it. And what we've done over the last 100 years is just strip the land bare and plant plants on it. And so when the wind comes, it blows the topsoil away. When the water comes, it washes it out right away, which is even the water absorption into the soil is minimized, which even has to deal with cooling and rain. The ecosystem around it gets pretty complex, and even the runoff from the fertilizers going into the rivers, going to the oceans, which make these algae blooms, which basically starves the area of oxygen. All this has a giant impact, and so the work with hemp and regenerative practices, I feel, is still one of the top things we could do as collectively, and by growing food in a regenerative fashion as well is also will affect our human health. on a deeper level. The soil kind of acts as a pre-stomach to us, and typically right now in conventional ag, there's only about 13 to 15 different minerals and bacteria that are in the soil, when in a healthy soil has around 57 different components to pull from. So if you could talk about how maybe some of the soil solutions that you guys use to improve soil health for farmers watching.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of resources, Stephen, and thankfully there'll be a lot more, because this is now a hot topic, and we actually need capitalism, whatever you want to call it, to kind of take over in some way and start to promote and make money on some of these solutions. But I feel like the easiest thing you can do, the 1-2-3 punch, is cover crops. Like before is, and it takes, and people are getting it right, but it takes some preparation to consider the cover crop that you want to plant in the fall to match what you'd like to do in the spring. But I think it starts with a cover crop, and depending on your region, depending on what you're trying to grow and accomplish. At this point, I was reading about a 15-way cover crop. There's 15 different species in the cover crop, which it creates like an instant meadow. But I think cover crop starts there. I'm a big advocate of seed treatment, in which you can basically do some combination of good bacteria and good fungi, mycorrhiza. And I think the combination of cover crops and then adding those elements to the crop that you're going to plant, and then a lot of times, if it's the right mixture, that will then stay with the roots, and it will then grow with the roots, and then incorporate that deeper into the soil. And so you can get a really quick return on your investment from a good cover crop, good seed treatment. And then, beyond that, if you have to spray something anyway, then you learn the processes of feeding that bacteria and feeding that fungi, and that might be with a protein. It could be with a sugar. And so there's so much work to be done. And there's been some great people that have got us started. But this is just like the hemp and the no-till setting. We were talking about getting it started. Man, that's just the fun we're going to have is with cover crops and with biological soil additives and trying to get away from the synthetics. So that's a quick rundown of what I'd like to see people try first. And if you manage the cover crop properly, then it's going to make for a very easy life through the growing season. And then, some of the rock stars out there, I'll mention Russell Hedrick. He's a friend of mine. He just posted a video of a corn crop that he grew, and they did a wide row spacing. And instead of doing what most people would consider a lay-by herbicide, a residual application, they instead sowed their cover crop in August, right on top of the growing corn. And they had selected the right species so that it's just going to grow in the understory beneath the ears of corn that they're going to harvest. And then if you can imagine, they're out there chopping this corn, 3 feet off the ground, and then it's ready for cattle in September. Like, drop the mic. It does not get any better than that. It does not get any better than that. So we've already, planned to incorporate that in our program this season. But there's a lot of ways you can maximize what you're doing to make more money. And it's got to be that. It can't be for the right thing. That's one of the reasons you begin that path, but it's got to make you money. We're at the end of the day, we're in business. And if you're lucky, you can be in the business of saving the world, but it's still a business.
I like that. Well, we're running out here time, but I'd like to get your take on what you think are the best next steps for the hemp industry to help create a blueprint for this plant to really expand and be the regenerative ag and the industrial use that it can to help minimize extractive practices.
You and I, we're on calls often, Stephen, and I know you recall our call yesterday, which I really enjoyed, with Miriam of Rosham. And we've all identified at the end of that call that what we really need are simple next steps. So this entire industry needs to have a collaborative professional effort to say, don't get caught up in the swirl of energy and opportunity. It's easy to do. But right now, we all need to take a little something for our hemp ADHD and like really dive down and focus on one thing in your region. Like find the path of least resistance, find the market, capture the market, serve the market, create a pristine product that the market would then like to buy again and repeat. Like what we really need is a lot of fundamental, simple truths and steps to be followed. Period. It does not need to be that this is different than any other opportunity. Like this needs to be business. That's what I would say that the hemp industry needs as a whole. And there's some brilliant people that are emerging. There are brilliant uses that are popping up. And what we need to do is, okay, that's great. But if your brilliant use and processing cost $100 million, that's great, but we'll probably get to you in 2025, right? So what we need to figure out are the business opportunities that cost $250,000, $500,000. A farmer pays $750,000 to $1 million for a cotton combine, a cotton harvester. So think about that. So this goes back to the co-op model. I think next steps are identify the market, find out do the market studies and market research to figure out what type of revenue is available in that market. Get to the price point, because everybody says hemp can replace everything, but if it costs 3 times as much as the alternative to the market, it's not going to fly. So we're getting to the nitty gritty. We're getting to the reality of the industry now, and that is that it has to compete. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to save the world. It's not what they wake up and think about. They don't think about the climate. Some people wake up and think about, how am I going to pay my mortgage, or how am I going to pay my rent? And so it's harder for those people to make that decision to buy the healthier alternative in a lot of ways. So that's my quick advice to the industry. Get real facts and get to work.
I like it. And then a last question I like to ask is, what are the first top use cases to get real on? Is it the concrete? Is it the textiles? Is it the grain? Which ones do you think are the easiest, the orderly tasks to tackle? And I think some of it can be regionalized. Like Wisconsin, they're probably more in tune to grow for maybe milk production, let's say. But what is your most orderly task for hemp? Is it the building materials? Is it paper? What do you think?
It goes from a scale, Stephen. If you're looking to make money for the small farmer, you're thinking more niche. You're thinking more specialty. You're thinking direct marketing your goods. As you move through the farm stages and sizes, and we get to the more commercial production model, it takes very, very large volume. So I believe personally that potentially the paper market, in a perfect world, obviously we would go after the single-use goods that are now clogging up our landfills and our oceans and our water. So I believe that there's huge potential that we could jump into the single-use plastic space. I think hurd is, obviously the most plentiful portion of the crop. There's already plenty of technology that can whittle that down and processes it to, go into the current, some of the current factories that exist. So I would think hurd is probably our best bet. Fiber, I'm part of a UK company, a big fan of what we're doing there. Everybody wants to wear a hemp t-shirt. So do I. But at the end of the day, that's 10% of the plant, and that's a totally different production model to get there. So I don't think anytime soon we're going to grow enough socks to get the volume that we need. Maybe in time, but for now, I think the commercial, industrial markets is where we need to focus. And that is like, paper. I feel like paper might have the greatest potential of any of those.
Well, awesome. Well, you can find Bert at Bioregen Co-op if you'd like to learn more about cooperatives. Great resource there. Bert's also got a product line with his own products that he grew, root2flower.com. And yeah, regenerative everything, is the topic of the day. And we're going to be signing off now for about a half hour. And when we come back, we'll have Tracy Ryan. Tracy has been working on the cannabis plant for over 7 years. She started Canna Kids to help with cannabis cancer treatment with kids. She also did Weed the People, a documentary on Netflix that I was informed that it's the only movie on cannabis that Congress has watched, which is pretty substantial. And she'll be talking to us about the medicinal. We'll talk to you soon.
See you, Stephen.